And I will make sure that we will have a training recording for your sessions, and that I have a separate training for the sessions for the other team, let's say, on the other days, because I think it's good to have a recording of what you have been told in the way you have seen it here. Of course, that means you can watch both. I will share them through Carlos Escalante, your customer success manager. So recording is started. The thing is, at this point, if you don't want to be in the recording, I'm going to ask you to leave, but I think that everybody benefits from this part. The written transcript, as far as I know, will be translated automatically in Spanish. At least that's what I hope. Yeah. Okay. So let's start the training. Let me see. The commerce overview. What I have is I've got a bunch of topics. I thought I put the topic list somewhere in the slide. It appears that I did not. I will try to fix that quickly during our first break. But for the rest, I've got a set of topics. I've got my decks ready. So the first deck that I want to talk about is the commerce overview. And the commerce overview is a very is a pretty long deck. Maybe I stop halfway for questions. I think that's something I will do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss things like, come on. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to do a platform overview. Most of you probably are already working with the platform, so this might come in familiar. I'm going to look at the commerce interfaces. That should actually be a plural there. And then we're going to talk about the terminology, where how we use it, because I know that our partners that are using our platform sometimes have a different terminology than we from the technical documentation perspective, from a training perspective, are referencing about things like a service plan. Most people talk about we sell products. In our terminology, for example, we talk about we sell service plans. And we don't sell them. We have customers subscribe to it in most cases. Operational terminology is in there. Commerce sales steps are involved there. I might go through it a little bit quicker there because we don't need that. You already have the platform. And as far as I know, you were pretty happy last time I was over. And a couple of troubleshooting resources that you might need to use for that. After this, like I said, I'm going to probably do a break halfway, or at least a Q&A halfway, short break, and then at the end of the module, another break. So the platform overview. And what we do here is we try to position why we created the platform the way we did it, with a specific use case in mind. And what we are doing is we are trying to look at it from some of my colleagues call it customers, I would say from a partner's perspective. And in this case, the partner is Michael Damian. He is a gardener from the north of Florida whose business quickly outgrew him. So that means that Michael was well known because he was able to deliver a very special kind of rose. At first, Michael reached a small customer base, just local. To manage all the payments, he had a simple point of sale machine. The thing is that his roses were very, very special. And that means that at some point, a distributor from Florida asked Michael to start selling them all over the state. So not just in his local town, but he's outgrowing his town into statewide. He agreed, but with such a rudimentary payment system, he soon started to have some issues. Eventually, Bigger problems appeared when Michael started selling his roses all over the globe. So even more growth. At that point, his point of sale machine was not able to handle the load, and it literally caught fire. And aside from the minor problems of a burned up machine, Michael started to feel that one-off sales were not the best approach for his business. So he decided to become a pioneer in selling flowers using a kind of subscription model. So Michael decided that it was a better idea to ask his customers to subscribe to flower delivery for special occasions. Subscription model would ensure that no one would miss a special date with their loved ones, and managing these recurring orders for Michael and all his resellers in his direct sales channel became a bigger challenge. So this is where Cloud Blue Commerce can help our customers. And that's a key thing. What I like about this part of the presentation is, let's not just talk about Cloud Blue Commerce in a cloud world, because Cloud Blue Commerce is a subscription model management system. And whether those subscriptions are to like a flower bunch, like we just saw, or whether it is, I would almost say, for the pizza of the week club, you can do it with Cloud Blue Commerce. Of course, in 99.9% of the use cases, Cloud Blue Commerce is used for cloud services, software as a service kind of subscriptions. But you can use it for basically anything if you want to. So let's check out the definition of our platform. So the definition of our platform is Cloud Blue Commerce is a multi-tier commerce platform for launching marketplaces for partners, resellers, and end customers to sell one-off products or subscriptions. That simply means that Cloud Blue Commerce allows us to manage our indirect and direct sales channels more efficiently. We are enabling resellers on our platform to not manage their products themselves, because at provider level, at platform owner level, those products are onboarded. However, it would allow those resellers to, let's say, add their own set of products to the platform. So let's say the provider has a deal with Microsoft for Microsoft 365, for Microsoft Azure, for Azure RI, with Dropbox for shared storage, with Acronis for backup software. And now this reseller is in the market of adding value to those products. What that reseller can do now is he can create a product in the platform. It would be a manual product, or he would have to onboard it on Connect, which is the next training, not the next day, but the next training group, to create his own product on Connect that he will import into the commerce environment, where he can create his products, and he can either bundle those products, or he can use those products as an upsell for the individual Office 365, Azure, Azure RI, Dropbox, and Acronis product set. So that is what makes our platform unique. You can do everything the same, or there is some kind of, let's say, differentiation between the different resellers, because they're in the same market and they're competing on other kind of things. One might compete on a price level, the other might compete at added value level. So that is all that we can do. That should position our platform. And a key thing here is also marketplaces. Marketplace, for me at least, means that there is some kind of possibility of self-service. If I go to the market and I want to buy some tomatoes, most of the time, or to the supermarket, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I go in there, take what I want, and go to the till and then pay at the end, right? I'm picking 5 tomatoes because I need 5 tomatoes. I'm not picking 16 tomatoes because that's the prepackaged thing. I take the 5 tomatoes. That's what our marketplace also allows you. So what are the features, the main features of our product? And I would almost say we have 7 key features. And the first one is what we just talked about, that marketplace. It provides businesses with an easy to set up e-commerce storefront. You can use this to make anonymous or registered purposes, right? And that's a choice. It's not one and the other, it's one and or the other. You can do a registered purchase, meaning that you have to be a customer on the platform already to purchase for yourself whatever you need extra. Or you can even have an anonymous marketplace where anybody just scrolls through and decides that he wants to buy something. He goes and onboards himself on the marketplace, makes his payment, for instance, by using a credit card, and that's it. I know that in American Mobile, in Claro and Telmex, you have that Claro invoice, or at least invoice payments. That means that self-onboarding is a little bit less done, but the platform still offers it. So I want to talk about the generic story on one side and a little bit more about the typical setup that you have on the other. Another thing that marketplace enables is the trial, a trial subscription. A trial subscription simply means that for a limited time, I get to select a product that I want to try out. I'm not sure if this is the right choice. There might be different options to try, or different versions of a product, different levels of a product that you are considering and you don't know which one to take. So you can take a trial of a certain product. And that is, I think, also key for what, because a trial product is a time-limited thing. Sometimes, depending on the vendor, it's also a functionality-limited thing. It depends a little bit on what the vendor offers you. Most of them, however, offer you a full-fledged product that only has a certain time limit on it, and after that, if the customer doesn't do anything, it either goes into a paid subscription or it stops, or that subscription stops and the customer cannot access it anymore. Another thing we offer is the offer catalog. That means that everybody can create their own packages, their own product recommendations. For instance, let's go back to Michael with his flowers. Michael can use this, for instance, to create, and we just had that. Maybe, no, let's go for another example. For the Easter offering, the Easter bundle, where with the flowers you get a chocolate Easter bunny or a nice package of Easter eggs and a greeting card that you can send to your customers. It's up to you what you do with that offer catalog. Of course, it can, again, be straight and simple with product A, B, C, and D in it that is delivered to you as a reseller from the provider perspective. It could also mean that you are going to customize it for your market. In your case, since you have all the countries on, I think if I'm correct, 3 different platforms, the global product set is the same. However, one of the things that I'm not sure if they are still there, but they used to be there, is OACI or PACI or cloud infrastructure, where the cloud infrastructure was hosted in a local data center. From a legal perspective, of course, a perfect idea that somebody in Chile would have their data also stored in a Chilean data center. So you can fine-tune your offer catalog based on the generic product set that is there, of course. In most cases, as a reseller, you would have to work with the provider to get it working and to get it set up, but still it allows you for that flexibility. Of course, it also does subscription management, because the whole idea behind Cloud Blue Commerce is that we're talking about subscriptions. You don't buy, of course, you can buy a computer, but that's not where the power of Cloud Blue Commerce is. The power of Cloud Blue Commerce is on all those software as a service subscriptions, where a customer can go in and expand his subscription because he just hired 3 more people. So he needs 3 more licenses. He doesn't have to, let's say, plan ahead for the full year. The moment he plans ahead for the full year and things go weird, he has a problem. So subscription management, part of that can even be self-service, depending on how you set up the control panel and the access of that end user, of that end customer. The system can do and handle billing and invoicing. Either it does it through using credit cards or PayPal payments and things like that, that the system actually handles the real-time payments using the payment providers out there, or we generate data that can be imported to a billing system that will do the invoicing for you. So 2 different options. And as I said, it's multi-channel. Resellers get access to their own product set, either competing resellers or resellers that are operating in, and maybe I shouldn't call them resellers in that case, but opcos, resellers that are operating in different regions for the same company. Why would you want to do that? Because you might have different currencies, for instance. That's one of the key reasons to have multi-channel. We have our own identity and access platform inside the identity and access methods inside the platform. We can allow users to use username and password. We can set a password strength inside the platform, but we can also use an external identity source like Azure AD if needed. So there are different ways to get access to the system. And again, this is not one or the other, but it could be for your internal people. We have Azure AD. For your end customers, it's username, password. Those kind of things can happen. And eventually, of course, if everything goes well and the platform functions as expected, we can also set up usage reports. Usage reports for end customer services in this case. So for Azure is not prepaid. Azure is postpaid on a basis of a pay-as-you-go system. So if a customer uses CPU, he pays for that at the end of the month. It's all automatically collected. Be aware that the product configuration for that needs to be done by the vendor. So if you create your own product in Connect and you have a pay-as-you-go setup, you have to make sure that inside that product in Connect, there is some kind of way to collect that data and hand it over to Commerce again. So let's go back to Michael. Michael has a wonderful marketplace now where not only he sells his roses, but as you see on the left side, he has bolted on products from other vendors in his region so that he can make those bundles more interesting. Roses with, let's say, chocolate, or roses with photo opportunities, things like that. That means that those vendors on the left side, let me get a pen in there now. I've got a pen. All right, let's see, do I have, where's my mouse? Oh, yeah, there I am. Here we are. So these vendors that are on this side are now the product owners. Product owners that need, of course, to set up their products. These are the Microsofts, the Acronises, the Dropboxes of the Cloud Blue SaaS world. And then, of course, he has a lot of markets in here. He's got different countries with different packages or different opcos or whatever, how this party is set up. It's all very flexible. And that is, I think, the key advantage of using Cloudblue Commerce as a product. Of course, here we are. We have a couple of examples of products that are onboarded. We see more and more willingness to onboard on Connect, our, let's say, fulfillment platform, to make sure that products can be sold through Cloudblue Commerce. So this list is expanding and expanding and expanding. So here we have Michael. Oh, here we have Michael again. Cloudblue Connect is responsible for managing the relationship with the vendor. So this part would be the Connect part. That's the next training, not the next module, but the next training. And what we are discussing at this moment, let me get a different color pen. What we're going to discuss in this training is more or less this side of the fence. That is the focus that we have. Michael's customers and indirect channels. That means that we look at the relationship between a provider and the customer. In this case, the provider is Michael. And where do we find Cloudblue Commerce? Cloudblue Commerce we will find in the midst of this. And there are a couple of possibilities. We can do direct channel, meaning that the provider sells to a customer in a direct way. There are no resellers onboarded. There are no opcos between it. We see this less and less, to be honest, but it's still a possibility. The platform is built for that. I saw a hand up. Did I see that correct? Nope. Okay. Let me continue. Another option would be indirect sales. Indirect sales could also mean a setup like you have, where the platform is in one country, let's say Colombia or in Argentina. As far as I know, those are at least two of your platforms in South America. And then there are countries on top of that platform as a reseller. We also consider that indirect channel, even though they are within the same company. For us, it's an indirect channel, meaning that there is, from a hierarchy perspective, there is a reseller in between. And whether that reseller is an operating unit or whether that reseller is a, let's say, a competitor, it doesn't matter. We make sure that each reseller, and I'm going to use that word from now, and you have to assume that when I talk about reseller, I also talk about opcos, that each reseller can only see anything below his entry point as in login. So looking at the flags in there, I see the top flag is a Brazilian flag. So if you log in at that level, you will see sub-resellers of Brazil. You see the customers of Brazil, and that's about it. You will not be able to move into the Spanish environment and see the customers from Spain or see the customers from, if I am correct, what is it? Is it Uruguay or is it Argentina? The bottom one. But you will not be able to see those. You would, if you want to, you would have to have a login at that level. Of course, if there are sub-resellers under Brazil and that sub-reseller logs into his level, he is not able to see what Brazil is doing. And that also means that that sub-reseller cannot see who his competitors are. He just sees his customers. And the weird thing in that scenario is that as a provider, you're able to see those. And that means that you could see all, or that there are customers on the platform multiple times, because they could be a customer of reseller A for Azure and Azure RI. and they could be a customer for reseller B for instance, Dropbox. Not knowing that everything comes from the same source, namely that provider.
Sorry, Eric.
Go ahead.
Can I interrupt you? There is some people in the meeting that would like to have the translation simultaneously. That configuration should be made by the organizer. So is it possible to change that options for the
Let me
people that
see.
is?
How do I do the settings? Language and speak.
I post in the
I see a link. Yeah.
in the chat the
Start live translation, transcript settings, language spoken. Let me see. I'm going to do that. I'm in the meeting. Let me pull up that part. Of course, that's not a problem. Let me see. No. I'm going to language and speech settings, transcript settings. I don't see transcript settings. Let me share my screen quickly, what I'm doing here.
I posted in the chat of the meeting.
Yeah, I know, but I don't see the option.
Okay.
Maybe let's see. I've got my transcript here. Where's my transcript? View transcript. Oh, maybe I should do this. Let me see. I've never done this before. Oh, there we go. Now I see it. Come on, where's my Teams? There it is. I need that one. So we go here. And we go for Spanish, right? Which one do you want?
I think that the spoken language is yours. It is English, and the transcript to Spanish.
That should be this one. Update. Let me see.
No. The spoken language should be English. The spoken language is English. It's just that there should be an option for a transcript language. See, it's not translating correctly. It's translating. You need to put it in English, otherwise the transcription will be.
So let me see.
Bananas.
English, US, probably what I'm doing.
See.
The thing is that if I do this.
Yeah, the thing is you have the meaning these, but you should have a transcript language. I did not see that on your options.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. There should be two options there: the meeting language and the transcript language. Why is that there?
What I see here in the knowledge base article that we have here, it says that the spoken language should be
what everybody is speaking. It's what we are talking.
The transcript will be displayed in the language that I choose here. That's how I read it.
Yeah, but when you put that in Spanish, it was just bananas. It was not translating to Spanish at all.
Let me see. Let's see what this does.
No, terrible. It's not. Yeah, you know what I mean? It goes bananas.
Yeah. But I cannot do that much about it.
Yes, perhaps you have to change it in
Spanish
the meeting options, but I think that perhaps in this meeting we will continue in this way, but perhaps for the next meetings, if it will be possible,
let's figure this out. Yeah.
But just put it in English back, because then at least we have the transcription in English, and then we can put this in Google Translator or something. Yeah.
That's a good one. Let me
We
see.
love Google
English US.
Translator, right? This is nice. We love it.
Okay, there we go. Okay, let me see, where were we? I'm going to use this one a little bit later and see if it works. It could also be that this is still a limitation of our of the translator feature that we have here. It might be that he doesn't understand my English. Wouldn't be the first one.
No, don't say that.
Okay, so indirect channels and direct channels. Those are two things that our system supports. And when we talk about indirect, it means multi-level indirect, right? So we can have the provider in Argentina, and then we've got an opco / reseller in Chile, and they could have a sub reseller that is selling to direct end customers as well. So we're not limiting amounts of levels of resellers. We don't have a hard limit of anything there. Let me see. Am I in? Yeah, I'm in. All right. The thing is, with Cloud Blue, we are talking about two workspaces. When we look at the classic environment, at least. And the classic environment comes from the time that these two workspaces used to be separate products that you could separately buy. We had an operations option that you could use for provisioning, and you could layer on top your own billing system, or you could buy our billing half of the platform. At some point, I think it was 6 years ago, we decided that doesn't work. So we decided, okay, let's make this a single product where both operations as well as billing are there. However, under the hood, you see that those were two different environments because they both have their own separate database. They have their same, have a different behavior when it comes to the maintenance of your customers. For operations, it does not matter if a customer is deleted, because there are no financial data. There's no financial data in there. There's no information that needs to be retained from a legal perspective. It just says, hey, this customer now has 3 licenses and he buys a 4th one, so now he has 4 licenses. That's it. On the billing side, however, the billing side is a financial system. So you cannot delete financial transactions for your financial history. So in billing, you can only disable accounts, and you can cancel subscriptions, but you cannot delete subscriptions. So there is a little bit of difference. So what are those two halves doing? Operations, like I said, is responsible for service provisioning and resource allocation. If a customer wants to buy cloud infrastructure, and he needs, let's say, 4 processors, 5 gigs of RAM, and 250 gigs of disk space, operations is responsible for telling the other system to allocate that for this customer. It is also responsible for infrastructure management. It knows which modules are installed. It knows which components are there. It knows what IP addresses it's listening to. It knows which brands are there and which control panel entry points are there. And it is it's managing the system itself. Did everything boot up after the last maintenance cycle and reboot of our system? Do we have all modules up and running? Do they communicate to each other? That is where operations comes in. Of course, on the billing side, we see more of the business requirements. So we are talking about product management and pricing. Product management as in products that we sell to the customer. We're not talking in this case anymore about it's Office 365. No, now we're talking about an E5 license or Azure RI specific reserved instances of VMs. That's product management on the billing side. We also do subscription and channel management. Subscription management is logical. A customer needs to be billed for a subscription that is running. If he needs extra licenses, he can buy it, and his subscription will be upgraded. Of course, billing hands over that provisioning part and resource allocation parts to operations. And after that, billing takes care of the invoicing of that, like I said in the last line. So those are the different tasks. If you troubleshoot and you have to troubleshoot something involving money, you go to billing. If you have to troubleshoot something and it involves how many actual licenses or what specific amount of resources does a customer have for his subscription for cloud infrastructure or for his subscription on Office 365, you go to operations and you can see that. Of course, another important concept is an account. And an account in Cloud Blue, and this is regardless of whether we're talking operations as well as billing, because these accounts are visible on both sides, of course, with the respective logical information. So the information is similar, but not the same. We don't store double information. We have similar information, but a little bit different. For us, a company is represented by an account. An account is a business account, and that account must have at least one user called admin. It's not the username that's an admin, but that first user will always be the customer administrator, meaning that that user has all the rights to that specific account. He can buy new subscriptions, cancel subscriptions, add resources, remove resources, all of course within the policies of the vendor, but that's what that user can do. And the thing is, of course, there is a difference between accounts and users, and depending on where you come from. If you come from enterprise IT, and when I started this work with this platform, for me, an account was a login, a user. Of course, now I know that it depends on where you come from and where you are, if that's the case. In our case, an account is a business representation, somebody who pays the bills for the subscriptions that account has. The user is the person that accesses and interacts with the platform. The platform allows for privileges, meaning that I can create roles inside a platform where a user, for instance, can only pay the bills and not subscribe to other services, whereas somebody else can only subscribe to new services and expand the existing subscriptions, but is not able to pay his bills. So those separations can be made using privileges. We call these people staff members. Staff members, users can manage the account and access the services it subscribes to. That is, let's say, those are those customer administrators, the people who are responsible for the entire account, who are able to buy extra or who are able to pay bills. We all call those staff members. We also have a concept called a service user. And the service user would, for instance, be a person that has received an Office 365 license. So they can only use the services that the staff member assigned to them. That's the difference between the two user types that we have. Service users are only relevant for the operations part. The billing part, we don't care. We only care about how many licenses an account has, not who is using them. So if you want to troubleshoot a service user, you have to be in operations. So those are the, let's say, the people options that we have in the platform. And then we also have, of course, the account types. We've got provider, we've got reseller, we've got customer. Who's the provider? It's the platform owner. The provider is a business that sells products or services to customers using direct and indirect sales channels, and they own the infrastructure. Because if you really look careful at the definition in at the top, that could also be a reseller, because the reseller buys from the provider and sells to direct or indirect channels of their services. The difference between a provider and a reseller is that the provider owns the infrastructure. And that means that that provider also has super admin access. Super admin access in this case means the provider has all the access to all the layers below him. Is that logical? I think it is, because that provider also needs to troubleshoot on behalf of resellers sometimes. If the customer has an issue, the first escalation step would be talk to your reseller. If the reseller cannot fix it, he goes to the level above him, and that continues until you reach the provider, and that means that the provider needs to be able to see everything that is happening on his platform. And I would say it comes with the job. Then we have resellers. And like I said, the definition is almost the same. The only addition here is that reseller purchases from the provider with the intention of reselling them. In the latest version, because we're not using the last features in this definition. In the latest version of the platform, it is possible that a reseller onboards its own products as well. And how do you get there? Well, you're invited by a provider. You're going to set up a contract with that provider, or you are an opco of that provider and say, hey, we want to use that platform. If it's a competing reseller, you can have them pay for the usage of it. Or you can say, okay, if you resell my products, I want to have a percentage of the profit that you make through our platform, because we manage the platform for you. We have people running around doing that. We did have to buy the hardware, or we're buying the Azure subscription where that platform in Kubernetes is running. So we have a cost. And of course, part of that cost needs to be paid by you, because you want to use that platform and not have your own platform. It also means they have limited admin access. What does the limited mean? It means that you only see in your hierarchy down and not able to see who's, let's say, competing with you on that same platform. And then we've got the most important role. And some people always say, yeah, but the provider is the most important role. I would say no, the customer is the most important role. Why? Without customers, you don't make money. So the only way to make a lot of money is have a lot of customers. And the customer in this case is, of course, the end user who purchases the product on the marketplace. There are two ways to onboard. Technically, I'm not talking about your specific situation, but I'm talking about the generic platform. You can create it through an account manager. Somebody logs in and creates a new customer, places an order on behalf of them. That part is provisioned, and we have a new customer. It could also mean that you have what we call the public marketplace setup. The public marketplace being that marketplace where you scroll through and decide that you want to have this product and that I want to use and onboard that commerce platform to manage my subscription and maybe buy more later down the line. So self-service onboarding or assisted onboarding. As we said, 3 types of account. We've got a provider and a customer. So if there is a relationship from the customer directly to the provider, we call it a direct sales channel. If there are resellers between one or multiple levels, doesn't matter, we call it an indirect sales channel. And any of these levels here, we call a reseller. We're not really discussing that much about first level reseller, second level reseller. We call them resellers. Of course, when it is the moment we talk about a very specific reseller, it's good to know at what level that reseller resides. But in general, it's just a reseller. So before I continue with the rest of the module, what questions do you have? And if you want to, you can type them in. I do understand a little bit of Spanish. So if you want to do it in Spanish, I can try to understand, or one of you can help me there. And if there are no more questions, can you give me a thumbs up in Teams? I see thumbs up coming in. Good, thank you. Super, thank you very much. Even the transcript. Somebody changed it to Spanish Spain again. So it's still a mess. Let me change it back to English. Update. Let's see if this is better. Yeah, now at least it's English that we have here. I see a lot of garbage. Okay, let's go. From a interface perspective, from a reseller view, now we have different looks into the world of cloud WooCommerce, because, and we tend to make, let's say, comparisons. One of the things that's always a nice discussion, if you're at a bar or whatever, is to have a discussion with people about, if they have a car, what type is it? Is it a manual shift or is it an auto, right? From my perspective, there are advantages to both. And for me, it would depend on what kind of engine you have, how you use it, et cetera, et cetera. If, for instance, I would have a full electric car, I would prefer to have an auto shift. Why? Because everything can be optimized using all the computer logic in that car to make things work. I don't need to interfere with that. I have a feeling that it's better to work with it in an auto setup. If you have a car like I have, a gas car, just petrol in it, I like my stick shift, where I see, for instance, that my car is telling me to shift up way earlier than I like. Especially when I look at gas usage, my car tends to say, hey, you have to go to the 4th gear or 5th gear or 6th gear or whatever. And then I see the fuel consumption rise a lot. So in those cases, I shift back and I ignore the car. In that case, I prefer to have my manual. So is one better than the other? I don't think so. And we have the same thing in commerce, because in Cloud WooCommerce, we have a classic panel and we've got something we call UX1. And the classic panel is referred to as an older version of commerce interface designed for the most proficient users. So those are the most expert users. And then we've got UX1, which is a more modern interface for the most regular commerce users. The thing is that in the classic panel, you can fine tune. In UX1, you can do your day-to-day job. So I'm not sure who of you in the audience will need access to the classic panel. I think that in most cases, 90% can be done in UX1 nowadays, but there are 2 panels there, and I'm going to pick up a demo on this in a second. So for provider, and here we have different scenarios. For classic panel, we have what we call the PCP, or provider control panel. And here you see that we have a operations control panel and we've got a billing control panel. That is those 2 workspaces that I talked about earlier. And we've got UX1. UX1 for provider is there. We also have the same similar scenario, UX1 for resellers. Operations control panel in the reseller control panel, RCP, reseller control panel, is of course a little bit limited. Why is it limited? Because a reseller will not see the infrastructure behind it. The reseller will not see all integrations, maybe only the integrations that are limited, that are relevant for that specific reseller. That's a key thing. We hide what you don't need or what you are not supposed to see. And we've got what we call UX1 for resellers. And the last one, I have to make amends to this one because this is not true anymore. Because this one in version 21, oh, that's not good. I don't want that in blue. I want that in red to make it more clear. We don't have a version 1, a classic panel for customers anymore. We don't need it anymore. In version 20, and I think it's not even 20.5, the last version on 20, but a prior version, we needed the old control panel for customers for some services. Now everything has been ported to UX1, so it's not there anymore. Let me, because the next items are screenshots, and I don't like screenshots. I like live demos. Let me pull up my environment and let me check if I am still logged in by logging out and logging in again. Don't tell me okay, got it. I need to log in. This is the UX1 version. This is a control panel that I'm using, which is our demo setup, our demo environment, and I'm not a provider at that point. I'm a reseller only. So I am, in this case, not able to show you provider access. But for 90% of what I'm going to do, it's not relevant to have that provider access. I'm going to make sure that in the commerce admin training, I do have it because there it is relevant. This is how you always log in. You always end up in UX1 unless you are really working at this level. If you're working at provider, you log into the PCP, but you can switch to UX1. In all other cases, for customers and resellers, you first log in to UX1, and then there is this link, if it is configured for you, to what we call the classic panel. The classic panel will open in a separate window. So you see, different tab, the old one is still open. It logs you in a different tab with the same logged in user. I always start at operations. So let me go back to my slides and do a wipe quickly. Let's do that. And you end up in operations. And that means that if I am in operations, I see a word billing here, which is the link to the billing side of the platform. And if you look carefully, you will see the navigation change a little bit, but the overall look and feel is about the same. I've got my customers here. I've got sub resellers here if needed. I can see subscriptions. I can see orders that have been placed. I can see provisioning if there's something relevant to see, etc., etc. So there's a lot of navigation. And next to my operations back, so these two toggle in the same window. Next to billing or operations, there is a UX1, which brings you back here. Again, in a new tab, which is confusing because I still have it open on this side. So I'm not sure why they do it that way. Probably because it's not possible to verify that if you have something open. So I'm going to close it. The easiest way to go back to UX1 is just close the classic panel. And you end up being here again. Since version 21, we have something that is called the new experience. It changes the look and feel a little bit. There is a tour around it. I'm going to skip it for now. You see that the graphics are a little bit different. The idea behind the new experience is that it is loading a little bit faster. We use a different technology that takes less time to process. However, not all products have converted to that new experience yet. So it is a choice that we give you to look at. Your navigation always to the left, whether it is in classic panel or whether it is in UX1. For those coming from a longer history in the platform, the UX1 is what we used to call CCP v2 or Customer Control Panel version 2. We've got this for provider, looking similar to these. We've got this for resellers, as you see it here. But we also have this for an end customer. So this is the dashboard of my customer. Customer has some IaaS services that he ordered. He can see which users are there, but you see no link to a classic panel anymore. So this is the end customer. And as I said, the end customer here does not have the classic experience anymore. It's not needed. I see a hand up. Is that a question?
Yep, it's a quick one. Yeah, just want to know which version of CBC are you using here?
I am using version 21, which is fairly similar to version 20.5 that you should have.
Yeah, no, it's just that you have a lot more options in the provider panel than I do. So that's why I asked you. I'm just confirming this.
You mean here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that has to do with all the modules that we have installed, because the platform is modular. And since this is our demonstration platform, we decided to put every single module that we can sell to a customer. We have put it in. It might be that in your scenario in UX1, you don't have all those modules installed because it's not relevant for you and for your business. So that might be a reason why you don't have those options in this in the
UX1. I just have it on the classic panel, because I have all of those in the classic panel. I don't have them on the UX1. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, it probably has to do with that fact.
With modules and not version.
No.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Let me continue in my slide deck. Let's see what we have. We've got the classic panel for provider. There's a lot more in there. This is the actual provider where you see the services. And as you see in my classic panel, let me go there. Come on. It's always this bloody thing. In my services, there is a smaller list because not everything is available for me as a reseller. And then we have the navigation bar there where we can toggle towards all kinds of scenarios. And we've got the UX1. And this is a UX1 for provider. That is I would almost say the oldest UX1 screenshot that we have. This is the first one where you see that there is hardly any interesting information in there. So, of course, over time, we added functionality to UX1 for provider, UX1 for reseller. We also added functionality to the platform with different modules that can be installed. And of course, what you see in your navigation in UX1 is a result of that addition of those scenarios. In this case, I don't have native integrations, but the module is there, so it gives me that little icon. Analytics is also a separate module. I can see what my revenue is month over month and year over year. You see that my business is not going that well. I have one customer that has a free subscription, and that's all there is to it. So you see those kind of scenarios as well. What is more important is the account itself. So just click through. As long as you don't click OKs in wizards, you won't break anything, you won't order anything. For the rest, let me see, what more questions do you have? If not, I'll continue to the product terminology. And after, let me quickly scan, we've got product terminology. We're over halfway of the module, so I'm going to finalize this module, then take a break. A short break. So, terminology. And again, we want to do that through an analogy. So imagine that we are chefs, right? Our restaurant wants to create a great dish and include it in the menu. But how do we create that dish? What will we need? The first thing we're looking for is, okay, what main ingredients do we need? Creating a great dish requires a primary resources that can be combined to create a tasty result, right? So without eggs, there is no omelet. I can have the bacon in there. I've got the onions. I've got whatever you want in your omelet. If I don't have an egg, I don't have an omelet, right? Those kind of things you need to think about when we're talking about main ingredients. Of course, we also need a recipe. I mean, how do you create an omelet? Well, you break the eggs, you whisk them, and then bake them with or without other ingredients. That's an omelet. Maybe you add some salt and pepper or whatever you want, extra cheese in it. That's what the recipe brings us. How are we preparing those ingredients? And of course, eventually, we will have that final dish. And part of this, the final dish, is how much do we expect this? How often are people going to buy this? How many orders will we serve with that amount, right? We have a recipe. It says 15 eggs. I'm pretty sure that's not a recipe for a single omelet. Unless you're very obese, but I'm refusing to believe that 15 eggs recipe serves a single dish. So that's a key thing. Of course, what do we sell it for? What is the price to it? That is your final dish. And using those analogies, we're going to now create what we call a service plan. A service plan is an object that we sell through the platform. So how are we using those analogies? What are those ingredients? We call them resources. Resources or resource types. We've got a recipe. We call it a service template. And then we've got the service plan eventually. That is the dish that we're selling through the platform. The quantities, prices, etc. So A resource is an object that is required for creating a service. For a virtual machine solution, that could, for instance, be storage, CPU, memory, etc., etc. The service template is, let's say, a blueprint that selects the resources. It is the basis needed to build a service plan on top of that. So in this case, it's a little bit weird example, but the example gives us that storage and CPU are needed for this solution and memory is not. I know that's a weird example, but that's how we would see it. We have 3 resources, and for this product, we only use 2. It's a weird virtual machine, I know. I didn't make these slides. And of course, the final step includes creating the dish and defining the final offer. So we are talking about an offer that adds quantities. So now we're not talking about memory anymore, but we're talking about an amount of memory. We're not talking about CPU anymore. We're talking about how many cores are we talking. We're not talking about storage. We're talking about how many gigs or terabytes of storage are we discussing. And of course, what would it cost? This is what the customer will purchase. I would almost say in normal terminology, this is the product the customer will buy. So in our case, again, with that virtual machine solution, we are talking about 8 terabytes of storage, 4 cores of CPU, where the customer pays $99 for a month. In this case, since it's not a one-off payment, but it's a subscription, of course, the billing period and the subscription period are also vital scenarios that you need to define. I'm defining in this case that a customer for the 8 terabyte storage 4 core virtual machine will pay $99 a month. So these are the 3 most important concepts for creating an offer in Cloud Blue Commerce. And that means that a product is the item ready for sale, is the service plan in this case, right? The difference between a product and a service plan, I would say there is not that much of a difference. For us, when we talk to our customers, end customers, we talk about products, right? We're talking about the products within Office 365 portfolio. We talk about the products in the Dropbox portfolio. Internally, in our platform, we talk about service plans in this case. Why is this so important for us? Because when we receive a lot of when we receive tickets for support or whatever, we see people using those terminologies mixed up. The problem with that is we don't always know, our tech people don't always know which product we're talking about. Because we do in the platform, we do have a concept called product as well. In that case, we're talking about the entire Office 365 portfolio. So if somebody says the product, this and this product is wrong, and we're troubleshooting the integration with Microsoft 365, whereas we should have troubleshoot the service plan for an E5 license, it's a complete different category of troubleshooting and a different place to troubleshoot. That's why for us, it's vital that between us, we use the correct terminology. Service plan, if we're talking about that single item thing that the customer subscribes to. Product, if you're talking about the connection to Microsoft. And then we also have some operational terminology. Of course, we again are talking about food. Why? Because I like food. The person that created this slide deck is also a foodie. So we decided that we're talking about recipes. We're talking about requests for meal, etc. what is needed to have that dish delivered, and whether or not that dish is delivered in the restaurant or it is brought to you by Uber Eats or whatever, there has to be a meal request. The chef is in the kitchen, I'm at a table in a restaurant, and somebody has to take my request, right? Whether that is through some kind of fancy tablet or app kind of thing where you scan the QR code and send the request automated to the kitchen, or whether there is actually a waiter coming with old-fashioned paper and pen, there has to be a meal request. If that is an Uber Eats website, the request has to be there. Of course, at some point, the cook cooks your dinner, and then it has to be delivered to you by scooter, by Uber Eats, by the waiter itself, bringing it to your table. Or what I've seen recently is those waiter robots, where there is this little cart automated driving to your table where you can take off your tray or your dish, and it greets you and it says thank you, and that's it. It's fancy stuff, but it's all the same stuff. It is delivering your food. And then the tricky part is eventually we can do subscriptions too. Let's say you know that on Friday you're always very busy, you don't want to do your groceries, you want to have your dinner delivered, and knowing yourself, you know, on Friday it's pizza day. So why do we not take a subscription to the pizza of the month every Friday? It's an option, it's possible. So how are we now converting those three concepts? I would almost say the first two, because the last one is pretty obvious. A subscription to the pizza of the month is, or pizza of the week, is of course a subscription to Office 365. So I've given that away. But how do we convert those first two, meal request and delivering, to terminology in our platform? Well, in English, it's easy. It's a meal request, or basically, if the waiter comes to your table, they already use the word, right? Are you ready to order in English? So we're talking about an order there. In our UI, let me go to classic panel because it's a little bit more relevant. Orders are related to money, right? I'm buying that dish that I know will cost me 20 euros, so it is related to money. There is an order here, options of order, and I see that on this one, my provisioning failed, so I have to troubleshoot that. We have orders, and if I place that order, it needs to be provisioned, and provisioning is the whole process in the restaurant as well of getting that order ticket to the kitchen, the cook cooking the dinner, putting it either on a plate or putting it in those boxes that they deliver, that they ship it to your home with. That's the whole process, together with handing it to the driver driving to your home and delivering it on your doorstep. That is what we call provision. In Office 365, it's the same thing, right? I place an order on it, I pay it, the platform goes to Office 365, tells Office 365, hey, I've got a new customer, this customer needs an E5 license, can you create the tenant for me, can you create the license for me, and then give me feedback about that license. That license is handed to CloudBlue. CloudBlue hands it to the customer, including the tenant login, etc., etc. So that is the actual provisioning. And like I said already, I gave it away at the initial one. Subscriptions will be subscriptions. So an order, what is an order? An order is a request from the customer to the seller, not to the vendor, to the seller. And the seller is his first upstream seller. That behind the scenes, there might be another level and another level before you reach the vendor. That's up to the platform and up to the configuration. Provisioning is providing access to the service, right? Setting up tenants, setting up those resources, that memory, setting up that virtual machine with 4 cores and 5 terabytes of storage. That is provisioning. And the subscription in billing is the object that contains information about the services ordered. What do I mean with that? I mean with that it has a start date, the subscription. It has an end date, an expiration date. It knows the status of that service. It has the price and the billing information about that subscription. And billing information is generic, like it knows about the billing period. Do we bill per month? Do we bill per quarter? Do we bill per year? Is it a prepaid or a postpaid subscription? All that information is in the subscription itself. So recap will be an order goes to provisioning. Provisioning, when it's done, ends up giving the customer a subscription. So from a commercial perspective, that results in a complete flow from beginning until end. The first thing that needs to be done, of course, in the platform is that we need to create that service. We need to create that service plan to be sold. Initially, that is, of course, integrating Office 365 with the CloudBlue infrastructure or with the CloudBlue platform, getting those resources in, setting up those service templates, setting up those service plans. In most cases, that is done at provider level, and then customers can place an order. In general, it means that some kind of payment is done. It could be a dummy payment. It could be a dummy payment where, because, hey, we do a credit assessment outside of the platform, we don't have people on board automatically and without us knowing. So the payment process is a fake process. We will bill the customer later. Or it could be as real as it gets, with now you have to fill out your PayPal credentials, or you have to fill out your credit card information. Then we go provision, and the billing process ends with, if provision is difficult word. If provisioning is successful, we give you the invoice. And over time, of course, it's a subscription. So it's recurring payment scenarios. That means that the billing process is finished for the individual sale, but over time, new billing orders will occur. So what is that new billing order? Well, it is actually fairly simple. We have a billing order, which simply means that the customer now is in his subsequent months or years of his subscription. So we generate an invoice for him to be paid, and then the customer pays again. Again, if you handle the actual money flow outside of CloudBlue, that payment process could be a dummy. The thing is that the platform expects those payments. So if that payment is not made, the service is not provisioned. And if over time these payments are not processed, dummy or not, the subscription will eventually be put on credit hold because the system thinks that the customer does not pay his bills. That's a key thing to know. So if we compare, we see two differences, one major difference. This is where the payment precedes the billing process, and here we have the billing process precede the payment. This is where prepaid products will only be provisioned if the payment has been made, and then we invoice if everything is successful. But of course, for every subsequent payment, the customer needs to first know how much he needs to pay. That is why the billing process is first and then the payment is there. How can you buy? Fairly simple. There are two options. There's self-service and there's assisted sales. I hear somebody. Tell me. Was that a question?
Fábio, fecha o microfone. Fábio Raimundo, fecha o microfone. Sorry, somebody opened the microphone. You can,
Yeah, okay,
you
no
can
problem,
just
no problem.
mute him. You mute him. Don't worry.
Thank you. So we have two options. We can do self-service, meaning a customer logs into the platform. Let me see. I think I have a customer here. Goes to the marketplace. Decides that he wants some infrastructure stuff. Places an order for RI. Now I'm acting as a customer and go through the motions of the cart. Do next, finish. Let me zero. There we are. Next, finish. And I have my scenario there. Or I can do a assisted sales where I go to the marketplace from a reseller or provider perspective. I select that I want infrastructure as a service. And I'm going to again do Azure and Azure RI. And in this case, the scenario is a little bit different because now I have to provide for which customer I am going to handle that payment. So those are two options there. Self-service can happen through the public marketplace if it is enabled, or through UX1 for customers, as I've shown you. And assisted sales can be done in two ways as well. UX1 for resellers, as I've shown you, or through the classic panel. But there is a limitation to the classic panel. If your products are implemented through a new module called Product Lifecycle Management, PLM, you can only do UX1 for resellers. So from my perspective, this is the advised way always to sell in an assisted sales scenario. More flexible, it works better, and it works for all products, whereas this part only works for classic products, and not everything is a classic product. The flow is always the same. You select a service. In that service, you select for how long. So here I selected Azure RI. Then I select which Azure RI plan do I want. If needed, I complete parameters. That could be parameters for the customer, or it could be parameters for the service to be used, like for instance, a domain. And we place the order, and the system will provision the service. So that is the module that I wanted to do. Before I go and give you a, let's say, 7-minute break, what questions do you have on everything that I covered so far? Maybe all of this is already known. If not, don't hesitate to ask those questions. You can use the chat with Google Translate, or you can just put in your question in Spanish, and I will try to use Google Translate, or you can unmute yourself. If not, in my time zone, it is 14:32. What is important for me is the 32 part. Let's be back at 40. Is that okay with you? Perfect. Okay, see you in 7 minutes then. I know. Hi all. Let me close the door here and let's restart. Been playing around with the links that I received. I've got this one. Let me share my screen. So I've been, come on, looking at what I have here. This is one of the items that I have on my laptop. The problem is I don't have the free translator mobile app here. I need to initiate my call on Teams. And I cannot start a conversation in this one because it's all about chat. So it's not the transcript that I can get translated. That's how I read it. I will investigate tomorrow morning further on my side. Let me continue with the slides. And now that I think of it, I wanted to do it a little bit different. So I'm going to stop the recording.